for being here. So we have said, when I became governor, we said we are not a sanctuary state, and we're not going to allow sanctuary cities. So one of the biggest pieces of legislation I signed my first year was to ban sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. It should have been done before. It hadn't been, and so we leaned in and got that done. And I know Blaise Angolia was a big help with doing that. Now, that year, 19 and 20, was a little easier because under Trump 45, if you had somebody that we picked up, particularly through our justice system, they were happy to take them and repatriate them to their home countries. Biden came in and things changed dramatically. He opened the border, and interior enforcement really collapsed with respect to illegal immigration. So we saw what was happening at the border, and people act like, oh, just let those border communities just deal with it. It doesn't affect anyone else. That is the furthest thing from the truth. That open southern border affected the entire country, and I think everybody saw that in pretty short order. So we were the first state to launch in to help Texas back in 2021 with what was happening at the southern border. And so our Operation Lone Star deployed more than 1,000 guardsmen, national and state, as well as state law enforcement, including Florida Highway Patrol, to Texas to help stop what was happening at the southern border. It's interesting. You had those communities flooded, but then people going everywhere. And our guys would apprehend when they're coming in. They say, where are you looking to go? And a lot of them were looking to go to Florida. Because you remember, everyone wanted to be in Florida. You didn't want to be in San Francisco then. I was locked down for COVID. You had homeless, all this stuff. So people were naturally doing it, including those folks coming across the border. And so we obviously knew that'd be it's a huge issue for our state. So we have to do it. And you had a lot in the media that were like, "You're not a border state. Why do you care?" Well, no, we do care because it's a national problem. And even if it didn't directly affect Florida, even if none of the illegals wanted to come to Florida, we, as the third largest state in the country, we support the sovereignty of this country. We support having enforceable borders. That's a good thing to have as an American. So we were happy to be involved in that. And isn't it interesting? Yet a lot of the people, they didn't care about what was happening at the border. What happened when we sent 50 to Martha's Vineyard? All of a sudden, it was like panic time to have 50. And they called out the National Guard, and they redeployed them. They got them off that island very quickly. And that's what happened. So, and then you started seeing busing to New York City and Chicago and this, and they didn't like that very much. So obviously this was going to have an impact across the country, and we stepped up, and the FHP was a big part of that. We also launched Operation Vigilant Sentry because we saw that, particularly with instability in like Haiti and some of these places, people want to get on these boats and they want to show up on the shores of Florida. And under Biden, once they got to the shore, he didn't do anything really to them. So that really handicapped us. And so we said, you know what? The Coast Guard's out there. Honestly, the Coast Guard does work hard at this. There wasn't enough Coast Guard presence to stop all these boats. So we surged our maritime resources. And since we've done that, we've had more than 19,000 illegal aliens that have been interdicted by the state's efforts. That's in addition to everything that the feds and the Coast Guard and all of them stop. And that includes more than 470 vessels that just our folks under our operation were able to stop. And when you see some of these folks, they'll be with contraband. You got firearms, you got narcotics, you've got all this stuff. Why would we want a band of 15 Haitians armed showing up on the shores of Florida? Obviously, I don't think that that's a good thing. Incidentally, I had a tussle with the Speaker of the House and some of the legislators earlier this year on immigration, because I said President Trump's coming into office, we need to be full throttle in support, and we need to get this done with the deportations. They actually passed a bill that I vetoed that would have terminated Operation Vigilant Sentry. And so those illegals on those boats would have been able to pour in to this country. And, you know, Blaze was one of the ones that was standing with you on that. But I vetoed that legislation, and the legislation we eventually got in was able to supplement what we were already doing, which I think is really, really significant. But just keep in mind, all this was done under a state of emergency for immigration, similar to what President Trump has done federally. And if you terminate that and you take the power away from the governor to be able to do any immigration enforcement, you have no maritime interdictions. Obviously, the southern border, that's not an issue anymore because that's been taken care of, I think, very well. But all the stuff we're doing interior, above and beyond what we would do just in the normal course of law enforcement, requires that authority. We did do the transport program. Obviously, a lot of people remember Martha's Vineyard, and that really helped open the eyes of, I think, a lot of people around the country that this is a major problem. But, you know, there was New York City, Chicago, California. There was a lot of stuff going on, and those are sanctuary jurisdictions. And so they say they're sanctuary jurisdictions, but then they don't like when folks are being funneled there. And so it's interesting how that works out. We've also done a lot of strong legislation. We have enacted, finally, E-Verify legislation for legal workforce. We also made sure that there would be no IDs issued to illegal aliens in the state of Florida. Now, we don't do driver's licenses for illegals. We would never do that. But local governments wanted to issue IDs, not drivers, but IDs. Even nonprofits wanted to do it, and we said, no, we're not going to do that. And we don't recognize IDs issued by sanctuary states like California. So if you're illegally here, they issue you an ID. You come here, we won't do it. And that's the thing. If you don't want illegal immigration, then you can't provide any type of benefits to illegal immigration. That's one of the reasons we worked hard to get rid of in-state tuition at our colleges for illegals. That was instituted before I became governor. That's an incentive for people to want to be in the country illegally. ID cards and benefits are incentives. So we've worked really hard to police that, and I think we've done that better than any other state in the country. Now, that's all great, all the stuff that we did leading up. But when the Trump administration was getting ready to take office, we knew we had an opportunity to be huge partners in the efforts of actually seeing our laws enforced, actually restoring the country's sovereignty. And that, yes, that involves the southern border, and fortunately they're able to handle that at the federal level without needing the support of states like Florida. But then what about the interior of the country and all the things that's happened over these many years with millions and millions plowing in? Even people that come in on like a visa and stay, there's huge problems that come with all this stuff. So what tools do we have? Well, there's a program, a federal program called 287G, and Biden basically mothballed it when he was in for 4 years. But what it does is it allows ICE to delegate to state and local law enforcement the authority to perform specified immigration functions under the agency's direction and oversight. And so people will say you have federal, the immigration's federal, and that's true. But, you know, shouldn't states be able to supplement that? And of course they should be able to. And so this provides a framework to be able to do that. So ICE operations can partner with our state and local agencies to identify and remove both criminal aliens and run-of-the-mill illegal aliens that are in our communities. So to date, more than 1,800 Florida Highway Patrol troopers have completed their 287G training and have received their credentials. We have more than 100 FHP troopers that have been sworn in as Deputy U.S. Marshals, which gives them the ability to execute federal search warrants on the worst of the worst in terms of illegals that are in our state. We also have active 287G agreements with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, Fish and Wildlife, and the Florida State Guard, and we've even expanded into some of our regulatory spaces. Now, because of the legislation I signed earlier this year, we required participation of all local and state agencies. State agencies is easy because I will just tell them, hey, you got to do it, let's do it, and they were eager to do it. Mark Glass at FDLE, Dave Kerner, I mean, they were ready, willing, and able to do it. Didn't have to twist their arm. That wouldn't have been true with every local, municipal, or county law enforcement agency. That's just the fact. They are all have a duty under the law to participate, and that means all 67 counties have signed agreements through their sheriff's department with the 287G program, and many, many municipalities have done the same. It's interesting with FHP and kind of all they've done. They were doing a lot with the border. They were doing a lot to help mitigate the damage Biden was doing here interior. But with Biden, you could have illegal alien get in a car accident, and if ICE wouldn't accept, then there was nothing they can do on the immigration front because they didn't have the authority to act on their own. Now they're able to do that, and they can work seamlessly with the federal government. So it's really, really positive to have that type of relationship. But because they're doing all this, and really in many respects are the tip of the sphere, I called for a big pay increase for FHP this year in the budget, and we had to fight for that, but we were able to deliver the largest pay increase in the agency's history in the budget I signed at the end of June. So I was happy to be able to do that. I think, and we want to do that to be able to retain good people, but we also want to recognize that there's great duties that are being exercised here that are above and beyond what would traditionally be called for in those circumstances. As we're working with the feds, and Larry keeps working with them as kind of our liaison, we're like, okay, what do you need, this, that, and the other thing? And everything we were doing was great, but we were able to apprehend illegal aliens faster than the federal government could detain, process, and deport them. And part of that is they just didn't have enough space. Now, we had some of our local facilities. You'd have sheriffs could put some people for somewhere, but that really isn't going to be enough. And so we sprung into action to help with that detention, processing, and deportation part of this, which is at the tail end of when somebody would initially be identified and be apprehended. And so we were able to, federal government asked us to be a part of this. We're doing it. We created the facility, Alligator Alcatraz. Folks are contracted to do that on behalf of the state of Florida, but everything we do is going to be reimbursed by the Department of Homeland Security and the federal government. But we were able to stand that up in like a week. And you now have a situation where you have thousands of folks that can be there for processing and ultimately for removal. And there's this massive airstrip. I don't know, it was built many decades ago, but massive airstrip. They've built, all this stuff. It's all temporary, but they've built it. So you literally could have people, you drive them 2,000 feet, they get on a plane, and then they're gone. So thus far, we've had over 600 that have been deported from Alligator Alcatraz by ICE, and that cadence is starting to rapidly increase. And that's what I've told people. It's like, our interest is to facilitate the removal of illegal aliens. It's not to just, what New York was doing, they were just putting them up in these luxury hotels at your expense. Like, I have no desire to do that. Our detention and processing is all leading into the removal. And so that cadence is important. The more that's there, the more we'll be able to send, or DHS can send. And I've said we're even willing to expand that footprint if we need it to Camp Blanding in Northeast Florida, and maybe even some others. But that's ramping up. I think it's doing good, but we want to see even more into the future. So the need, as I said, was simply because FHP is out there and they're able to interact and they're able to apprehend very quickly and very efficiently. You think about the roadways that are out there. We want safe roadways. We want safe streets. The reality is some of these people that are coming here illegally, they are not trained to drive the way we would do to get a license. They're not licensed drivers in the state of Florida, and you do see a lot of really tragic situations. And we have a state rep in the Florida House of Representatives, Cayenne Michael in Northeast Florida. Her son was killed by an illegal alien driver. And it's just thinking to yourself, it's like, why? This person shouldn't have even been on the streets. It had no right to be driving a car here, and yet they're out there, and now all of a sudden she lost her son. So the number of angel moms that I've met over the years whose son or daughter was killed by an illegal alien driver, I mean, it's pretty significant. And it's so unnecessary and so avoidable. So FHP, I guarantee you, with the apprehensions they've already done, I guarantee you they've saved many lives. Because if they weren't out there doing that, it was just a matter of time before you would see, maybe traffic, maybe otherwise, you absolutely would have seen lives taken had they not gotten these folks off the street. So far, FHP alone has apprehended, just since we started doing the 287G, they've apprehended almost 3,000 illegal aliens that were then later taken for immigration processing by the Department of Homeland Security. Over 500 of them already had an existing criminal record. They're actually convicted of things. It's like, why are you in the country when you've already been convicted of something, when you never had a right to be here in the first place? Our state troopers have stopped vehicles with illegal aliens that were possessing weapons, fentanyl, as well as large sums of cash, which, having large sums of cash in and of itself, a crime, and good on you if you're able to do that. But when I see it with fentanyl and I see it with narcotics, I think, okay, I know where that money's coming from, right? I mean, it's not like you're just out there working as an accountant 9 to 5. So they've uncovered human smuggling operations that are working deep within our state. Just in the past month, FHP has arrested a member of Tren de Aragua gang, which is a Venezuelan gang designated as a foreign terrorist group right here in Orange County, who had an extensive criminal history and an existing warrant. Up in North Florida in Wakulla County, FHP arrested an illegal alien who is a member of MS-13 gang. In Broward County, they arrested an illegal who's a member of the 18th Street gang from Guatemala, who had 2 prior removals from the United States. I mean, what are we even doing letting people come in multiple times like that? In Osceola County, they arrested an illegal alien who struck and killed a pedestrian and then fled the scene. Palm Beach County, they arrested an illegal wanted for murder in Guatemala. And in Hernando County, they arrested an illegal who was trafficking 30 pounds of marijuana. Those are just some examples from just the last month of what FHP's been doing. They've also assisted federal partners at Homeland Security and ICE with more than 470 joint operations leading to the arrest of illegal aliens. In April, many of you remember, Florida conducted a statewide operation, Operation Tidal Wave, in conjunction with our federal partners, and that led to the arrest of over 1,100 criminal illegal aliens in 1 week. That's the largest number in a single state in 1 week in the entire history of ICE as an organization. And of those, almost 2/3 had existing criminal records. Now, to further combat the threat of illegal immigration, Florida Highway Patrol is establishing a new immigration unit, the Immigration Enforcement Section within the Bureau of Criminal Investigations and Intelligence, to specialize in immigration enforcement. This team of mission-dedicated troopers will work in close contact with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners to identify, locate, and apprehend criminal aliens across the state. We're proud of the great work that FHP is doing. I want to thank Director Dave Kerner for leading the charge. There's no other state in the country that can match our efforts. In fact, there's no other state that is even in the ballpark of our efforts. And you remember when the president came down to South Florida to tour the alligator facility, he said, and his key people like Stephen Miller said, we need other states to be doing this. You're eligible to have it reimbursed by the federal government, so it isn't like it's going to be a cost on your budget ultimately. It's just the front. And I haven't seen anything else being stood up anywhere around the country. I haven't seen the type of numbers where our folks are intricately involved. And then, of course, The Maritime has gotten better because the Coast Guard has more resources dedicated to policing this since President Trump took office, but we're still helping there. Our footprint isn't as big as it was under Biden because, quite frankly, the threats aren't as great as they were under Biden. But we're still engaged in that, and we're still making arrests with that. So this has been, I don't think you've seen any state in the country work more closely with these federal agencies to fulfill a very key mission, a mandate from the American people after the 2024 election to get this job done. So we're showing that it can be done. There's a lot more that's going to happen. I mean, I know that they're going to really do more to stand up the agency a lot better than it had been under Biden. I know they're going to provide more resources for their ability to hold and process and deport folks, and hopefully without even needing it. And people will ask me like, well, you know, why are you involved in this? I'm involved in it because we have to be involved in it. I'm involved in it because if we're not involved in it, it's not going to get done right now. Maybe we'll reach a point as ICE continues to build up where they're going to be able to handle, where all we'll have to do is just let them know, hey, you know, we got a guy, they take him, and then we're not involved anymore, that we don't have to have any type of processing or detention that the state's involved with. I'd be happy with that if that were the case, but that's not where we're at now. So we can sit on our hands and watch the problems not get solved, or we can be part of the solution and help lead the efforts among the states to get the job done. We would not be able to do that without the great work of FHP. I'm glad that we were able to deliver a pay increase. Honestly,